Oh, the title of the book is Pirate Cinema. Oh, thank you very much. The book is called Pirate Cinema, and it'll be out, as I say, in spring 2012. It came in at 130,000 words, and that's a perfectly good length in English, but I've been asked to see if I can find 30,000 words to cut, because when it's translated into particularly Romance languages in German, it gets much longer, and they're worried about what the price will be as for a kid's book in foreign markets. They don't want it to be a very, very long book that's very expensive. Oh, well. And just call me Destroyer of Forests. Is this the first time I've written a story set in Britain? No. The dialogue in British. I've done a little, but not as much, and there's another dialogue pass coming that my wife, who is luckily a Londoner, is going to help me with. But yeah, no. Are you British? I can't quite hear your accent. No. What's it like as a process? So it was not super hard to write kind of approximate East London dialect, because I live in East London, and there it is. But what I found was really funny was trying to project forward slang and dialect by looking back on old euphemisms and old slang, and trying to kind of revive it, because there is a trend of slang that kind of comes in waves, and so that was pretty fun, kind of coming up with more antiquated stuff and pushing it back in. I got the wonderful Oxford Historical Thesaurus, the 2-volume Historical Thesaurus, which may be the most cumbersomely arranged reference book I've ever seen, but is nevertheless incredibly fun to use. So, and I started taking pictures of my favorite lists of synonyms and putting them in my Flickr feed. The question is, what's happened to science fiction? It seems like it's all about the now instead of about the future. And this particularly. So it's true that this piece draws from real life politics. The rule that says if you download 3 times, if you're accused of downloading 3 times, you'll be disconnected from the internet, has been brought into law in France. Shortly will be law in Spain. Has been proposed in Australia. Various versions passed in New Zealand, but were repealed after popular uprising. There have been different versions proposed in the US. It was briefly a part of UK law, but looks like it won't be a permanent fixture in UK law. It's called the 3 Strikes proposal. It was also included in drafts of the Anti-Counterfeiting Trade Agreement, which is a global treaty. And interestingly enough, from the leaks we've had from that treaty negotiation, it looks like Canada was the primary objector to this 3 Strikes language making it in, which makes me pretty happy to be a Canadian. And certainly, the punitive nature of disconnecting people from the internet, even if you're sure that they violated copyright, seems to me to be disproportionate. But in the way that it's been implemented in other countries, you have a kind of 2-minute kangaroo court where you can defend yourself without a lawyer, and then if you fail to convince the judge, they take away your internet for a year. And in some cases, there's not even that much due process. And my wife worked until recently for a public broadcaster in the UK called Channel 4, and she was involved in their public service remit in education. And she had commissioned some research on the way that internet access affects the most vulnerable families in the UK, and particularly families like this one living in council housing in the formerly industrial north, where most of the employment is left. And what she found was that if you took 2 families that had really similar circumstances, right, that kind of same background, same number of people living kind of in the same kind of building in the same part of town, but one had the internet and one didn't, that there were really dramatic differences on average in the life of the families that had internet access. Everything from like better nutrition outcomes to and health outcomes in general, to things like more social mobility, better grades for their kids, higher wages. There's a substantially higher wage that accompanies internet access at that level, because suddenly the number of jobs you can look at becomes much greater. Even more disposable income, where you have no or very little disposable income at the end of the month, where you're literally living without a spare penny. If you can get on the internet and save £1 for every one of your bills by getting an electronic bill, that's the difference between £0 in discretionary income and £10 in discretionary income every month. So it seems to me that even if we were convinced that you were violating copyright, that taking away that resource would be disproportionate, and taking it away when we're not sure, when all we have is an accusation, seems really disproportionate. But in terms of whether or not science fiction is a futuristic literature, the more I think about it, the more I'm convinced that science fiction has never been a particularly good way to learn about the future except accidentally, but it's always been an amazing way to find out the aspirations and fears of people about their relationship to technology in the time in which the fiction was written. And I think you can get that all the way back to Mary Shelley. And so I really like a recent trend in a few notable books to write science fiction set in the near future, the present, the recent past, and then in Neil Stephenson's case, several hundred years ago during the Enlightenment. And I think that there's a lot to be said for taking that science fictional approach of surfacing the fears and aspirations we have about technology through a kind of Gedanken experiment, a thought experiment, or a world that's been stripped of superfluous elements, and it just all that remains are elements that bring to the fore those fears and aspirations. And using that to apply stuff. Was that the wrap things up symbol? All right, thank you. I think we're done. Thank you very much.